Well, hello and welcome to Inspiring Moments, the Dr. Amy Show. I am your host, Dr. Amy Himes, and I want to say thank you for joining us on today's show. Now, this is a success strategy show, and our goal is to share tips and techniques to help you to reach your life dreams. Now, I'm a practicing psychologist and entrepreneur, and I specialize in helping individuals to change their mindsets and behavior in order to live the life they truly desire. And we would like for you to consider this show as your portal to success. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing the importance of personal branding. Now, as business owners, we know that branding our business is important, right? But what about branding ourselves? Have you ever heard about that? Well, today corporations are starting to act more like individuals because consumers are demanding brand engagement and two-way conversations. And this is why we see employees tweeting, employers tweeting, everybody out there and giving messages. And all of this is under the corporate umbrella. And the same strategies that companies use to brand products, guess what, can be leveraged to brand people. Yes, to brand us. We can do this by blogging. We see search engine optimization, press releases. All of these things are ways to brand yourself. For anyone interested in having a successful career, whether you're a job seeker, a consultant, a student, an employee, or entrepreneur, your personal brand means everything. It's your reputation, it's the size and strength of your network, and it's what's unique about you and the unique value that you can contribute to an organization and to your clients. So personal branding is just a process whereby people and their careers are marked as brands. It's been noted that while previous self-help management techniques were about self-improvement, well, the personal branding concept suggests instead that success comes from self-packaging. Personal branding is how we market ourselves to the world, and it's a way to make you different on so many levels from the next person. It's a timeless concept, and the two reasons why branding has always existed on a personal level is that we always have to sell ourselves in various situations, from trying to impress our managers to our bosses, to that even taking on bigger projects. We always have to impress other people, to convincing our friends to see a movie, whatever. We're always trying to convince people to do things our way. Also, we're always being judged based on first impression. So whether you like it or not, that's something you have to keep in mind. You're always going to be judged based on your first impression, which you must create that image that you actually want people to think of you as. From the clothing you wear, to how you behave and interact with other people, to your body language, everything is tied to your overall personal brand. So today we're going to tell you how to do that, and I have the honor of interviewing an expert in the field. Her name is Ms. Marva Goldsmith, who is a leading personal branding expert. She's a certified brand specialist and an image consultant, and she's here to help us understand the importance of personal branding. Marva, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Amy.
I am so excited to have you here today, and I guess just start up, please tell my viewing audience a little bit about you and your background.
Well, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
I am an electrical engineer by degree. I spent 20 years in the utility industry. And in 1990, I had an awesome opportunity to lobby on behalf of the company.
Oh, great.
And so I lobbied here in Washington for 4 years. And that's really where I started to understand that the world was not black and white, that there's not, always the one answer, the right answer, but that instead it's kind of gray. And so in that experience lobbying, I started to also understand personal branding. And so I spent 20 years, and then in 2000, I decided I wanted to come back to Washington. I'd moved back to Detroit, and I took a year off and went to the Kennedy School to get an advanced degree. And at that point, that's where I really started to understand what diversity was, because my classmates came from 45 different countries,
Right.
and there were 200 of us learning about public administration. And after that kind of experience, it was difficult for me to go back to the job that I had, and I decided that I would launch my business. And during that period, I started to learn about image consulting and wanted to really focus my practice on image consulting for politicians.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great. Well, what is so great? I think personal branding is so important because I think sometimes people forget that, unfortunately, people make impressions about us the first time they see us. And this is why personal branding is so important. I can remember when I was trying to climb the ladder as a manager, then as a director, I realized that how you look really plays an important part. Intellect is very important. That's probably going to get you in the door, but people want to know that you have that professional outward appearance too. So why do you think personal branding is just so important today?
Well, you know, personal branding, that whole image piece is one component of it.
Okay.
So how people respond to the story that you tell when they see you is very important, because we don't like to think a lot.
Right.
And so if we see you, we make some judgment, and it's based purely on what we see. Personal branding is really the strategy behind getting to a goal, especially if it is a career goal or if it's a business goal. So it's image plus leadership. And I think in your opening comments, you mentioned that, you know, branding is really about distinguishing yourself from the competition. And most people don't think about that. They don't think of themselves as a product. And so they are willing to be kind of an indistinguishable product, which means there's no real difference between them and the next person looking for the same job or functioning in the same way. So you have image, you have this understanding of how I distinguish myself from the competition. And then the other component, which is really important, is visibility. Right. And so it's all about, you know, getting other people to understand that leadership role that you're taking. And so visibility doesn't mean, you know, anything shocking, but it could just be writing a blog, or it could be, you know, taking a leadership role in a project at work.
Yes.
Or as entrepreneurs, it means getting visibility, like, you know, the website and this kind of talk show and things of that nature.
I think it's very important too, because when I was first introduced to the whole personal branding concept, you know, in my mind I thought about, you know, big companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's. I'm like, well, how can I be compared to Coca-Cola and those big companies? But what you realize is you are just as important as those companies, and the same strategies they use to get their products out there, those are strategies that we have to use as individuals. For me, as example, my brand is the Dr. Amy brand. So people will notice that everything that I do is Dr. Amy, rather it's the blog, the website, the talk show, everything is Dr. Amy, because I want people to remember Dr. Amy. If they can't remember anything else about me, they can remember that short Dr. Amy, and then they'll start to put the other pieces together. But one of the things that comes to mind is people might say, well, yes, that's fine if you have a product to sell. What's the advantage then of personal branding in the workplace when people know they want to get promoted? Because this is something I think a lot of people are missing out on.
Yeah, well, you know, personal branding, if you think about personal branding as perfume.
Yes, okay.
Okay, and so when you leave the room, perfume lingers. Okay, and so your personal brand lingers, right, after you've left the room. The question is, what is it that other people are saying about you when you leave the room? And so when you establish a firm brand in an organization, you may be known for the organization person. You know, maybe, you know, put her on a project because she's very organized. Okay. Or you may be the creativity person. As an example, I'm working on a project right now with a government agency, and I'm known as the out-of-the-box thinker.
Okay.
Because I'm always coming up with creative approaches to, you know, doing something that could be rather mundane.
Okay.
And so over time, what you have to demonstrate is that you can continuously deliver on that brand promise.
Okay. So what are the benefits then of personal branding? What are some of the major benefits?
Well, okay, so if you actually create the personal brand intentionally, well, first I should say that it's always authentic.
Okay.
Okay, and so then it becomes an easy thing to do. But what we have to take initiative on is making sure that whatever it is you want people to know you for, that those are the things that you promote.
Right.
And so if you think about like Starbucks as an example. So here's a cup of coffee that costs $4, okay? And when they first entered the market, what they wanted to be known for was a different kind of coffee experience.
Okay.
They wanted Americans to really experience kind of a European coffee market or a cafe. And at that time, we didn't have that. And so very quickly, they became known for the environment.
Okay.
You know, the lights were lower, the seats were cushy, there were conversation areas. Right. And in order to actually order a cup of coffee, you had to know a whole different language, you know, the frappuccinos
Right.
and the cappuccinos and all this kind of thing. If you think about your experience prior to that, it might have been just going into a 7-Eleven and, you know, getting the cup and putting it in French vanilla, hazelnut, those were your only choices. So Starbucks distinguished itself by the experience. And so
Okay.
that's what has to happen with personal branding, whether it's at work, whether it's as an entrepreneur, you have to distinguish yourself with some type of experience.
Okay.
And the experience needs to be defined in your mind. A lot of times people fail to create personal brands that achieve a goal because they don't have a goal in mind.
Okay. And that's very important. You have to have a goal with
You
almost
absolutely
anything
do.
to know where to start from. So how do you then compare personal branding for an individual to a big personal branding with a big corporation? We all know one of my biggest mentors, Oprah Winfrey, just did her last final show yesterday. Now, when I think about personal branding, especially on the female side, two people that comes to mind, Oprah Winfrey and Martha Stewart.
Yes.
Major brands, I mean, with everything. So how do you actually then get people to start to think about personal branding for an individual opposed to a big company?
Yeah, and of course the Oprah brand is a big company.
Yes.
But you don't think of it any differently.
Okay.
And the reality is, if we think of ourselves as products, you know, like there's a bunch of ketchup bottles on the shelf, a whole
Okay.
bunch of different brands. So you have a Del Monte brand, you have Heinz, you have other kinds of ketchups, but same product, right?
Okay.
Same ingredients. So if we think of ourselves, same experience, same skill sets, things of that nature, how do you start to distinguish yourself as a brand? Well, keeping on that example, Heinz, who captured more than 40% of the ketchup market, distinguished itself by identifying what they wanted to be known for. They wanted to be known as the thicker, richer ketchup.
Okay.
So everything that they did in their advertisement, you know, getting visibility and things of that nature, supported that desire to be known as the thicker, richer ketchup. I mean, you think about the commercials, there was the Anticipation song by Carly Simon. There is now the upside down bottle, which suggests, okay, now you don't have to wait.
Right.
So all of that goes into the creation of a brand.
Okay.
As an individual, if I want to be known for my creativity, okay, then when I show up for a project, I'm going to think of ways to be creative, to suggest other ways to introduce yourself, to bring in some fun things to do for like icebreakers and things of that nature, to look at creative approaches to actually complete the project.
Okay.
And so over time, people start to associate that thing with you, just like they associate the thicker, richer ketchup with Heinz.
With Heinz. So let me put you on the spot for a moment. I am a psychologist. Of course, I'm a doctor then. And what we're trying to build more is, because I'm a doctor, we want you to think about us as your prescription for personal success. Because when you're sick, you go to a medical doctor to get a prescription to get filled that's going to get you well. So for me, And as a psychologist in my business, I want people to think this is where I'm going to come when I think of something that I need to do to enhance my personal development or personal success. So you being a creative person, what might be some of the things then that you would say to me as an individual?
Well, actually, I like that whole concept of the
Okay.
prescription for success.
Yes.
And you might have in your marketing materials, you might take a shot with a pharmacy in the background.
Okay.
And you with the pharmacy, and then the tagline is your prescription to success. And so the person then starts to associate prescriptions with
Yes.
success. And then
I
all
like
of your,
that.
isn't that great?
Yes.
Okay, and so then all, all of your marketing materials then should have some type of conversation around prescription. It has that lead off into when you're
Right.
sick, da 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 da. You know, when you want success, the prescription is Dr. Amy.
Right. I like that a lot, and we have that in a lot of our materials. So I tell people, when you have conflict at work, the answer is Dr. Amy. When you need somebody to train your staff, the
prescription is.
Now I have to change that to
Right.
prescription.
That's right.
I
That's
like
right.
that. I like that, how that sounds. Now, for somebody else, if you can just give some steps to personal branding. Someone watching the show today, first time hearing about personal branding, you're the expert in this area. What would you tell them? Where would you tell them to go to begin? Other than, I mean, great, give Marva a call, right? She's
Yeah.
the expert and she can help you. But other than that, until they can give you a call, what might be some recommendations?
Well, the first thing is to have a goal.
Okay.
So you have to have a goal in mind. Then that becomes the North Star. Then after you have the goal, maybe it's, you know, become director of sales or something of that nature. Let's use that as an example. So if I want to become director of sales and I'm working in an organization right now, I want to know who's going to make the decision. Those are
Okay.
your brand builders. So that's
Okay.
kind of like the target. So what does the target need? Well, the target might need someone who can rally the troops, motivate the salespeople,
Okay.
that can get, you know, a good market share. And so you start to do things to demonstrate that that's what you can do. So first thing is identify what you want to be known for.
Okay.
Perhaps you can, if you have been really successful in the sales area, then you might write a book for new people coming into the
Absolutely,
organization,
yeah.
just kind of like a sales manual. These are the things, the shortcut to success here at whatever the company
That will
is.
immediately separate you from the pack.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Because then the target sees your value, the target sees your work ethic, the target also sees you providing value to their organization, and hopefully that ends with some results, which are increased sales.
I like that a lot, Marva. I'm so excited to have Marva here because in my new book, you hear me talking about my book all the time, Yes You Can, that's co-authored with Mr. Jim Rohn. Well, guess what? Marva is in chapter 7 of this book. So if you think you're not going to get enough information today, make sure and read chapter 7 of my book, because she's featured in that chapter, and she tells you all about personal branding and certainly gives you additional information. So Marva, what I want to say to you before we actually get started, not only are you a part of this book, I know you've written a book of your own that talks specifically about personal branding. If you would share that with our audience, please.
Yeah, actually, this is called, it's called Rebranding Yourself After Age 50.
Okay.
And I wrote the book right around my 50th birthday.
Okay.
And it started off as kind of a lark because, you know, I was just kind of tripping about turning 50.
Well, hold it up so everybody can see it. Go out and get a copy if you would. So it's called Rebranding Yourself After Age
50.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that, because 50 is that number where people tend to slow down.
Well, they lose their mind too.
Right.
One of the two. But it's really written for people who are in the midst of career transition.
Okay.
And at the time I wrote it, it was 2007 going into 2008. And there were a lot of people who had just lost jobs.
Okay.
And a lot of them were over the age of 50. And what they were doing, they were competing the way we did 20 years ago,
Yes.
which was simply to dust off your resume, put on a navy blue suit, and go to a job fair.
Okay.
And in today's environment, you really have to brand yourself. You have to be different, because if you think about it, the hiring managers were getting stacks of resumes.
Yes.
How does your resume float to the top?
So starting out, when you send your resume, and you have to find a way to have your resume to float to the top.
Well,
Okay.
you have to have not only must your resume float to the top. But really, it's now an online kind of activity.
Yes, it is, which is really annoying.
Well, actually, if you're branding yourself, is great.
Okay, tell me more then.
Well, so when you're branding yourself and you're looking for a job, the hiring manager most likely will Google you.
Okay.
If nothing comes up, that would suggest that there really is not a lot of story related to you.
Right.
Now, if you're in your 50s, then it also suggests that you may be a little bit behind the times.
Right.
So if you have been working anywhere for 15 to 20 years, you are an expert at something, or at least you should be.
Right.
And you should be able to write about it. And so branding yourself is all about, looking for opportunities to establish yourself as an expert.
Yeah.
Online is the easiest way to do it. So you might write articles, you might do a vlog, which is a video log if you don't like to write.
Right.
And so you might show up for 2 or 3 minutes and offer information about your field of expertise, kind of a how-to thing.
Right.
And so over time, you start to develop this laundry list or kind of a portfolio of yourself as an expert, demonstrating yourself as an expert.
Yes.
And so that's what's really important. And the other thing, it's not just online, but it's also offline.
Okay.
If you are looking for a job, you might want to join an association that's in your field of expertise.
Okay.
A lot of people will spend time at job fairs and things of that nature, but they don't go to conferences in their industry where there are people who are working who might have some opportunities for you, instead of they're spending time with people who are unemployed,
Right.
which is not a good strategy, right? There are other things that you might do. It just depends on what your goal is, what you want to distinguish yourself as, or what you want to be known for, and then that dictates where you go to get visibility.
Okay. So starting out, just starting from the resume, starting from having that presence. Everybody's an expert at something, whether it's, with your kids, your dog, whatever it is, you're an expert at something. So you can be demonstrating then your writing ability by writing about how to cook lasagna or whatever it is, and those employers then will be able to see that. So Marva, another question that I have to ask you. So we covered a little bit about that person who wants to progress in their career. What about entrepreneurs?
Oh, that's huge.
What are some of the things that they should be doing to brand themselves?
Yeah. Well, okay, again, goes back to the goal, but once you've identified what your niche market is, because that's key. A lot of times entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs, their niche is everybody. Anybody that'll buy my
just tell us what exactly is a niche market, because
So
some people may not know that.
a niche is narrowing down some group that has similar buying characteristics.
Yes.
So as an example, when I wrote this book, the cover of the book has me holding my AARP card. So it zeroes right into my niche market.
Yes, yes.
3 months or 6 months after I published this book, and I self-published, AARP purchased 1,500 copies of this book.
Now that's a success.
That's a success, and that is a narrowly defined niche. And so what you always want, you want people to find the value in whatever your product is. You want to speak to their pain points. And so in order to speak to someone's pain points, you really need to understand that particular market. And usually the narrower the niche, the easier it is.
Now let me ask you, since I have you here, I have to ask a little bit more about that secret sauce. You self-published a book and got AARP to buy 1,500 copies. Please share with us, how did you make that come to reality?
Well, okay, now the other thing I'm gonna say is branding happens over time.
Okay.
So very quickly, I did a workshop, an image workshop at Johns Hopkins University on image. One of the guys that was in the audience was from AARP.
Okay.
He loved the workshop, introduced me to the AARP people, and I started doing workshops on personal branding for their employees. Did so for about four or 5 years. In 2006, they had a downturn, so I no longer had that contract, but they were hosting job fair for their national conference in 2008 or 2009, and he heard about, he wanted to find an image consultant.
Yes.
Looked me up, found my website. I'm trying to
And
go
that's
fast.
how you actually got
and
it
saw
done.
the book.
Great.
And then
well,
he
let,
said, this
let
is
me ask you
perfect for our
this.
niche.
Now we are short on time. Quickly, in about 15 seconds, if you can, how can someone get in touch with you for you to help them with their personal branding?
MarvaGoldsmith.com
Okay.
or branding50.com.
Branding50.com. You heard it here. If you're interested in taking your career, taking your business, small business to another level, then you need personal branding, and Marva Goldsmith says she can actually help you. And I want to say to you too, remember what makes you unique makes you successful. Personal branding is about identifying and then communicating what makes you unique and relevant and different for your target audience so that you can reach your career and or your business goals. So if you understand your strengths, your skills, your passions and values, you can use this information to separate yourself from your competitors and really stand out from the crowd. So remember, personal branding is very powerful because it sends a clear, consistent message about who you are and what you have to offer. And remember, a strong, authentic personal brand helps you become known for what you're good at. It sets you apart from everyone else, and it can position you as a niche expert. So keep all of that in mind, and we are at the end of our show today, and I want to say thank you for joining us today, and be sure to tune in next time to the Dr. Amy Show, and remember to send your comments and questions about the show to me at dramy@amyhimes.com, and also let me know what topics and subjects you would like to learn more about, and also visit me on the blog, on my blog at developyourmindset.blogspot.com. And also I want to say thank you to my crew, to my guest today, Ms. Marva Goldsmith, and to my biggest fan down in Charleston, South Carolina, my father, Mr. James Himes. And I say to people all of the time, don't forget about your own brand. So remember, we create a new tomorrow by what we dream today. And we'll see you next time.